Okay, so today's lesson is on quadratic functions, and before I start, please make sure that you have a separate sheet of paper. I want you to put everything that you do today on loose leaf paper. You can put it in your notebook later, but you'll be turning in everything you do for classwork today, and the paper that you have handed out to you with all the problems, you need to take that home with you because that's your homework. So please don't write your answers on that because then you won't get credit for them. Okay? So let's go ahead and start with our objective like we normally do. So it's right there. Identify important points on the graph of a quadratic using only the equation in different forms. So go ahead and pause the video until you finish writing that out. Okay, so what we're talking about today is our quadratics or parabolas, and we're finding the x-intercepts, the y-intercepts, and then the vertices. And those are the important points that I'm referring to there. And then there are three different forms that we're going to be looking at today for how the equation could appear. Okay. So the first thing I want you to do is draw an x and a y axis on your graph. So I'll do the same. It's just like that. And then on that graph, I want you to draw a parabola. And I want you to make sure that your parabola doesn't look like mine or anybody else's. Everybody should have their own parabola. Remember, you can go upside down if you want. That's fine, as long as you have a parabola. Okay? Alright, so on your parabola that you have, and I'll draw mine here, I want you first to find the vertex of your parabola. So for example, here mine would be right there, and so I would say that my vertex is like -4, -5, or something like that. So you find what your vertex would be on your parabola, okay? Next, hopefully you're ready. If not, just pause as you need to. Next, I want you to find the x-intercept. So here, these are my two x-intercepts. And you should have two x-intercepts also. So mine could be, for example, -7, 0, and -2, 0. Some of you may have imaginary x-intercepts, like it could be floating up here somewhere. So if that's the case and it doesn't pass through the x-axis, then you can write they are imaginary, and that would be okay. Okay, so as you finish that, you can hit pause if you need to. Okay, and then the last thing I want you to do is find the y-intercept. On mine, my y-intercept would be all the way up there somewhere. Okay, so it doesn't have to be in the same place as your vertex, although a lot of the time it is. And specifically, my y-intercept would be like 0, 15, or something like that. Okay, so make sure you have all those things identified and labeled. Pause if you need to, and then continue. Okay, so the first thing we're going to talk about is vertex point, so make sure you have that title there. And the vertex that I had in the last slide was, I don't remember, -4, -5. Okay, so this -4, -5, you could put into this equation right here. So mine would be y equals a x minus, so that minus stays the same, -4, this is your x value of your vertex, plus k, which is -5. So this is your y value. So you see that our vertex is just going to be h comma k. Be very careful that when it's in the equation, this sign is different. So your final answer would be y equals a to the x plus 4 squared minus 5. Okay? And so, just to kind of review, it says, what does the a tell you? Here's my a. What does that tell you on the graph? Do you remember? So that one tells you how wide or narrow your graph would be. So we're not really focusing on that today. I just wanted to remind you of it. Okay, so here we have example 1. Find the vertex. So the vertex is going to be this number and this number. This guy changes the sign, and this guy keeps the same sign. So our vertex would be a +3 and a -4. This is always the x, this is always the y. Okay? We can now find the y-intercept. Remember, y-intercept is where x equals 0. So essentially we're finding f of 0. Okay, so if we substitute this all in, or not substitute, but simplify, 0 minus 3 squared, that just gives us 9, times 2 is 18, minus 4 is 14. So that would be your answer for the x-intercept. I'm sorry, for the y-intercept. And then for the x-intercept, I'm actually going to put this off because on your worksheet it doesn't ask for this until the very end. So don't worry about this. Although it would be pretty simple. Actually, I'll go ahead and solve it, but you don't need to worry about this on the papers that you're just about to do, or on the problems you're about to do. So when we're trying to find the y-intercept, we plug in x for 0. When we're trying to find the x-intercept, we plug in y for 0. So we have 0 equals 2 times x minus 3 squared minus 4. And then we're solving for this x here, so we're going to add 4 to both sides. Okay, and we're going to divide by that 2, so we have this. Then we square root the 2. And then lastly, we have square root of 2 plus 3 equals x. So I just added that 3 over there. So you could do it that way. This square root would be plus or minus, but you don't need to worry about that just yet. Okay, let's do this one. The vertex again. Change this sign would be a positive 2. This sign stays the same, and that's 5. For the y-intercept, we just plug in 0 for x. So we have negative 4 times 0 minus 2 squared plus 5. And you end up with negative 4 times 4 is negative 16 plus 5 is negative 11. So there's your answer for the y-intercept. And then the last one is the x-intercept. Again, you don't really have to do this on your worksheet, but we can do it together anyway. We're going to replace the y with a 0. And then just write everything out. And then it worked out really nice. We just subtract 5 from both sides. So we have negative 5 equals negative 4. I'm sorry, I'm sleepy. X minus 2 squared. We divide both sides by 4, so we get a positive 5/4. We can square root both sides, so we get 5 over 4 in square root, which is square root of 5 over 2, because you can take the square root of 4. And then the last step, we just add 2 to both sides, and so I'll write it up here, but you'd have x equals root 5 over 2 plus 2 would be your answer. Okay, so let's clear off this ink so you can actually see the problem. Oops. I want you to do 3 and 4 on your paper. Pause this, and then when you finish, you can come back to it, okay? And remember, you're doing this on the loose paper, not on your worksheet paper, because you're turning this in later. Okay, so now we're going to talk about standard form. We were talking about vertex form. This is standard form. And this is what you more commonly see. Something like 5x squared minus 6x plus 3, that would be considered standard form. Okay, so even though it's more commonly used, it's a little bit more difficult to get the parts out of it. The important thing that you want to know is that this is the vertex. So go ahead and write that formula down on your paper. Pause the video if you need to. Okay, and you know that this b would refer to the term by the x, and the a would refer to the first term. Okay, so if we look at this problem, we want to find the vertex, and the vertex is going to be negative b over 2a. So if we just substitute in, we have negative 2, that's our b, over 2a is 1, that's j. I don't know why I said j. That's 1, not j. So we just plug those in, and then we have negative 2 over 2 gives us negative 1. And so that would be our answer there. So if we wanted to get the actual point, because you remember in the other ones we had it like as an ordered pair, we'd need to plug in this negative 1 here into the original equation. So we have f of negative 1 equals negative 1 squared plus 2 times negative 1 plus 3. And then we just simplify. 1 minus 2 plus 3. This is going to be negative 1 plus 3, and that's 2. So that would be our answer right there. Okay, go ahead and pause the video because I'm going to clear off the ink here. Pause it if you need to. Okay, so the next question is the y-intercept. Once again, you're going to plug in a 0 for all the x's. So this would be 0, this would be 0, so they both go away, and you end up with 3. So our x-intercept is 3. If you're writing it as an ordered pair, it'd be 0, comma 3. And then the last one is the y-intercept. For this one, we'd want to actually go through and factor this. So if we factor this, we have x and x, and we could have plus 3 minus 1, but that wouldn't work. So you could try different things, but this one actually wouldn't factor very well, so we're just going to ignore this question. Again, when you have to actually answer this question in the notes, it's going to be, or in the classwork, it'll be a lot more simple than this, so you don't have to worry about that. Okay, so if you needed to see anything else on this problem, hit pause, otherwise I'm going on to the example 4. So for example 4, again, the vertex would be x equals negative b over 2a. So we're going to substitute in negative 4 over 2 times 1. And negative 4 divided by 2 is negative 2. So that would be that. And then to write it as a point, you just substitute 2 in. So we get 4 plus 8 plus 5. 4 plus 8 is 12 plus 5 is 17. So our point is negative 2 comma 17. Okay, go ahead and pause that if you need to, because I'm going to erase it. Okay, so for the y-intercept, we're going to plug in a 0 here, so that becomes 0, that becomes 0, 5 is our y-intercept. So you can just write 0 comma 5. And then once again for the x-intercept, you'd have to actually factor this, but it's not going to factor very nicely. And so we'll just leave that one alone for now until we get to that part in the worksheet, but you don't have to worry about that yet. Okay, so on your paper you need to do 6 and 8. Again, you're going to do that on the blank loose leaf paper, that way I can pick it up and get a grade for you. So pause here, and then when you finish, continue. Okay, so the last form we're going to talk about is called the x-intercept form, and it looks like this. It's kind of similar to the vertex form that we saw at the beginning, so you should have all 3 of these that I've shown you should all be written down, even though I didn't say that. But usually the way that they have this is after they factor, they get that. So when I was showing you earlier where I was trying to factor that out, that's what I'm saying, is like once you finish the factoring, then this is what you end up with. Okay? So the x-intercepts are going to be at P and at Q. Notice that when we were doing the vertex form, it was the vertex that was right there, and now we're doing the x-intercept form, so it's the x-intercepts that are right there, okay? And then as far as the vertex, it's going to be halfway in between the 2 roots. So I'll show you what I mean by that in a second. If you need to write this down, go ahead and pause the video before I go on. Okay, so we're going to find the x-intercepts, and they are here and here. And if you notice on the last slide, there's a minus sign and a minus sign there, which means that we're changing the sign once we get to here. So this becomes a positive 4, and this becomes a negative 2. And the y value is always 0 at the x-intercepts. So we have 4 comma 0 and negative 2, 0. Okay, and the x value of the vertex, so remember I told you that the vertex is halfway in between these 2 points. So if you think of a number line, here's one of them, here's the other. So if you go halfway in between, you go one this way, 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 and so this ends up being the halfway point. Okay? The other way you can do that is just averaging. So 4 plus negative 2 over 2, so it's, you add and then divide by however many you have. So that's 2 over 2, which is 1. Okay? Either way that you do that works. You can either find the average or you can count to the middle. Okay. And then for the y-intercept, just like before, we plug in a 0 for the x. So here's 0, here's 0. We end up with 1/2 times negative 4 times 2, which is 1/2 times negative 8, which is negative 4. Okay, so pause if you need to. Okay, and then example 6, again the x-intercepts are these, but the signs are flipped. So we have 3 comma 0 and negative 1 comma 0. Okay, the x value of the vertex is going to be halfway in between 3 and negative 1. So between here and here. So again, we end up at x equals 1. And again, you could have averaged and gotten the same thing. Okay, and then the last one, the y-intercept, we plug in 0, and we get this. So I went ahead and took these out since they're just 0 anyway. And so you end up with positive 6. Okay. So on your paper, go ahead and do 10 and 12. Remember, it's on the loose leaf paper that you're going to turn in later. And then pause, and when you're done, you can back the video. Okay, so your homework should be on that page that you have from the sub, and it's in the little box at the bottom. Make sure you don't turn that in, because if you do, then you don't have any way to do your homework. Okay, and if you have any questions, you guys know that you're welcome to send me messages. And at this point, I suggest that you go ahead and start on your homework if you haven't already started.